After months of delay, last fall we finally were able to see the text of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, text that corporate lobbyists had access to long before the American people and members of Congress and their staffs did. After examining the provisions in this deal, it's clear that far too many of these provisions sell out American workers and American jobs. In the months leading up to the release of this deal, I warned that too often our trade agreements, as far back as NAFTA and the permanent normal trade relations with China, not per se a trade agreement, but had the same effect in many ways. The Central American Free Trade Agreement, the South Korea Free Trade Agreement. These trade agreements amount to corporate handouts and worker sellouts. I warned our negotiators that they needed to do more to ensure that the deal created a truly level playing field for American workers and American businesses. Unfortunately, that's not what happened, particularly when it comes to standing up for the American auto industry. We hear often about the supposed opportunities that trade agreements will create, opportunities for more jobs, opportunities for small business, opportunities for more exports, for economic growth. But when I look at the Trans-Pacific Partnership, I don't see these actual, let's call them offensive opportunities. I mean, opportunities for American products to break into new markets, not just playing defense, but playing offense so that we can export into these new markets. Cheerleaders for this agreement, whether it's the Wall Street Journal editorial page, which is most Republicans in the Senate, or whether it's Republican leadership in the House, whether it's corporate CEOs, or whether it's the White House. Cheerleaders for this agreement say that new markets will be opened up for American cars, but we've heard those empty promises before. Under TPP, many of these new markets won't be opened on day one, as in the case of Malaysia and Vietnam. They won't be open day two or year one or year two. It'll be more than a decade until American automakers have full access to these closed markets. The TPP will do nothing to level the playing field with our top competitor, Japan, or to change Japan's distinction as the most closed auto market in the world. We know it's been that in the past. We know it's that today. There's nothing in here that would change or open up Japan's auto market, the auto market to sell into Japan. Car makers in Ohio, car makers across the country will compete with huge numbers of Japanese imports, but we don't have it today, and we won't have under TPP the same opportunity to export to Japan. That's because for decades, Japan has used barriers other than tariffs to keep their markets closed. Tariffs are one way. They charge huge tariffs, causing the price of the product that you import, say into Japan, to be too high for the Japanese to afford. But that's not what Japan does. Their tariffs are already at zero, so an agreement on tariffs will do nothing to create a level playing field. Japan keeps our products out in much more creative ways than tariffs. We've seen in the wake of the Korean Free Trade Agreement, even after our trading partners promised to remove these barriers to allow American cars into their market, they often don't. Opening up Japan's market didn't work in the 1980s. It didn't work in the 1990s. It doesn't seem that it'll be any different under the Trans-Pacific Partnership. So if there aren't new offensive in the sense of selling into those countries, opportunities, and I expect our negotiators at least to make sure this trade agreement protected American car makers and workers from a flood of cheap foreign competition. I would hope they made sure the benefits of the agreement would only go towards its members who have been part of the negotiating process and made concessions. But it's not. It's not just the TPP countries. It's not how I read the text, particularly when it comes to something called the rule of origins for autos, the rule of origin for autos. These rules of origin provisions determine how much of a car is made in the TPP region, and TPP rules are weaker than NAFTA's. That means how much of the car is actually made in the TPP countries, how much of the car must be made in the TPP countries to count as a TPP product. 62% of a vehicle must be made in the NAFTA region in order for it to qualify for the benefits of the NAFTA agreement. But only 45%, much less than NAFTA, in some cases even less than that, of a car has to be made in the TPP region to qualify for the agreement's benefits. So think about that. Under TPP, less than half a car has to be made in TPP countries, which include Canada, Mexico, and the United States, to receive the benefits of TPP. So what does that mean? That means that more than half the components in the car, more than half the car, can be made in China. So China can backdoor much of its supply chain into the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Then these cars, mostly made in China, will get the benefits of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, even though they aren't in the Trans-Pacific Partnership. And as more countries join TPP, that 45% rule will become an even weaker standard, and fewer of our cars will come from the U.S. auto supply chain. I never thought I'd be able to say this, Madam President, but this agreement makes NAFTA, an agreement I fought hard to defeat 20 years ago, this agreement makes NAFTA look good. TPP's auto rules were written for Japanese automakers to the benefit of China and at the expense of American auto jobs. TPP will jeopardize the livelihoods of thousands of Americans, including up to 600,000 Ohioans whose jobs depend on the U.S. auto supply chain. These aren't just statistics. We're talking about real workers in real plants, in real companies, in real communities in Ohio and across the country, with bills to pay and families to feed. They fought hard to bring the American auto industry back to life. Their hard work made the auto rescue a success. 2015 was a record year for automakers. We can't pull the rug out from under them now with a trade deal that sells out American auto jobs. Think of what we've done. In 2010, I believe only about, maybe fewer than this, 10 million vehicles were made in the United States. Today, that number is close to 17 million. Chrysler posted 7% gains in sales last year. GM and Ford were not far behind with 5%. I'm proud to say the best-selling American vehicle for 34 years running, the Ford F-150, runs on engines produced in Lima, Ohio. 5 years ago, the American's President Obama, did the right thing when he personally committed to saving the American auto industry. If you ask people in Ohio, in Toledo, in Avon Lake, in Cleveland, in Warren, in Lordstown, they know how important the auto rescue was. Since the auto rescue, and we were losing hundreds of thousands of jobs a month at the beginning of President Obama's term, since the auto rescue the next year, we've seen job growth in this country for 70 months in a row, 70 consecutive months of job growth, starting with the auto rescue. Now I hope the president will do the right thing again and go back to the drawing board on the aspects of this trade deal that we know will cost American auto jobs.